Before the election in Nigeria, I had spoken to my husband about us relocating to Canada. My husband said he didn't want to leave his business to relocate to Canada. I spoke to him about the future of our children, and he told me that his children are going to be fine. I spoke to him a couple of times, and he refused to follow me to Canada. So immediately I started working out with agents who made our visas and everything for us to leave. But my husband declined going. Remember that I had worked in a very wonderful firm where I got a lot of money and paid for everything. So I didn't need to use him as sponsor. Everything we're going for was to school, and they gave me every visa I needed. So fast forward to the day we'll be leaving Nigeria. My husband said he was only going to take us to Canada and come back because he does not want to relocate. Before I started applying, my husband had told me that he will see what he can do. Only for me to finish the application, and my husband said his spirit did not lead him to relocate out of Nigeria, that he will only visit those places and come back as we always did. But he cannot travel to relocate and leave his business in Nigeria. I pleaded with him, and he said nothing was going to make him leave. I spoke with a couple of friends. Some of his friends bought the idea. Some said I should allow him because I don't know what his intentions are. I prayed over it. I spoke to him. I spoke to our pastor, and he was still bent on not relocating. So I told him I will have to relocate with the children because I wanted a better future for my children. I didn't want these children to go through what I've gone through. Before the election, this was on. So when I left, the election took place. My husband saw everything that happened after the election, and he still was bent on living in Nigeria. So we went back and forth. He visited us a couple of times while we were there, but he never agreed to stay. Living alone in Canada was very difficult because having to juggle the job and the children and being able to be in their lives was very difficult. If my husband had followed me to Canada, it would have been easy for us to juggle everything together, but he refused. I begged, I spoke to him, I cried, he refused. So I decided that I was not going to talk to him about it again. So one of those events in our family happened, and I decided to come home. But I was telling him that if he could support our coming back before we go back, he could just pay our way down. When we are going back, I'll take care of it. My husband said no, he was not going to do that. That the only thing that will make him, or reason that will make him pay for our way, is when I agree to come back with the children. That even if I don't want to come back with the children, I should bring the children and go. So that was what my husband said. So I saw that it was not a good idea. So I stayed back with the children. My husband had been on my neck since that time. So at some point I saw that we used to talk like twice in a day. It reduced to once a day. And before you knew it, it reduced to once a week. It was very funny, but not funny. I spoke to some friends to help me speak to my husband to see the voice of reason, but my husband was not ready to listen. A lot of people have left Nigeria to either UK or Canada or America, and their spouses went with them, knowing how turbulent it is to settle in. The first 3 years is usually not easy, but my husband has refused to do that. So I spoke to a couple of friends, and they spoke to him. Some said I should let him be. Some said I should, speak to him. He will see. They asked if I had spoken to his family. I said yes, I had spoken to his family, but he was not ready to give in. He was not ready. His business in Nigeria was more important to him than the love he had for my family. So one day, there's this popular influencer that was online having a live stream, and I joined. I shared my experience about relocating, how relocating to Canada had, caused a problem in my marriage to the point where we would divorce. At that point, I didn't know whether we were still in a marriage or not. So when my husband saw that interview, he decided on his own to just stop talking to me. Whenever I called, he will not pick. He doesn't even call to speak to his children anymore. So 2 months later, I discovered that my husband was already seeing another woman, and they were planning to get married. I didn't even know about the marriage until one day I spoke to his sister, and we're talking, and the sister was like, that she doesn't feel I did the right thing leaving my husband in Nigeria. So I explained to her the reason why I had to leave, because things were not going the way we envisaged in this country, so I needed to leave. So my sister-in-law now told me that right now my husband is already planning to get married. So when I shouted what, I checked my BP. My BP had already gone up so high. I was panicking. I called my husband. He didn't pick. I sent him a message. He did not respond. So immediately I called my mother-in-law and I explained everything to my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law said, it's not like they are supporting him to get married, but he's already grown. And this back and forth about relocating and not relocating, he had asked you to come back. We have spoken to him as parents, but there's nothing we can do about it. So I decided to hold on to what my mother-in-law had said. I called my brothers-in-law, his siblings-in-law. I spoke with my brothers and sisters-in-law. I spoke to them, and they said I should give them some time. They were going to call me back. They decided to hold a family meeting where they called my husband to the meeting, and he told them that if the meeting is about me, he was not going to come. So they told him that the meeting was about me and partly about the children, that it's high time he came for the meeting so that they can discuss and settle this thing amicably. So when my husband came, they asked him a question: are you still interested in getting married to your first wife? And he said no, that he's no longer interested in me, that he doesn't want to continue the marriage again, that I decided to leave, that the moment I left Nigeria and he spoke to me against my wish and I insisted on leaving, he saw that I was not under him anymore. And he tried to persuade me and I did not listen. That was how my marriage, I got a divorce for just relocating. Not that we had a prior problem or issues or quarrel. I decided to not talk about it. Now my husband decides to file a divorce and asking that the custody of his children be given to him. While I'm there, I cannot attend court cases here in Nigeria. So I can only maybe get a lawyer that will stand for me while we'll be talking. There could be, now the courts allow Zoom court sessions. So that's just where I am at. But right now, if I want to advise anybody who is in a marriage and wants to relocate, except you are ready to let that marriage go, I'm picking up my pieces because I feel that it's high time I moved on. My kids are with me while the court session is going on. But if you asked a younger self of me, like somebody who is younger than me, like the time I left Nigeria, this is about 2 years, going to 3 years, would I have done or gone through this route about relocating without my husband's, permission? I would say no. I have heard a lot of people who have been relocated to the UK, their husbands went with them, and when they got there, it was problem, just because the men never accepted or agreed to go with their wives. But their wives decided to leave Nigeria because they felt that there will be a better life out there. So their husbands were not used to being the ones to do things at home as it is in the other world, where you have to do things. You have to be a hands-on father. You have to be, doing chores, doing other things at home. But African men are not wired like that. So it was difficult for these women, as it is in my case. My husband never agreed for they want to even join us. He never. He came a few times to visit. So I'm advising you, if you're planning to travel out of this country, be in agreement with your husband, be in agreement with your wife, because it goes both ways. Some wives do not want to relocate, while some husbands do not want to relocate. So be in agreement with your partner. Do not be like this couple that I've just told you their story, because this matter is real. As we speak, as we make this video, the case is in court already, and the man is already traditionally married to the other woman who he was seeing after the wife decided not to come back. So whatever it is you are doing, whatever it is you want to plan to do now or in the future, and you are married, take your partner along. Do it together. That's why marriage is a partnership, is a covenant, and it's two people in agreement. You bring your 100, I bring my 100, we put it together. Because a divided home is not a sweet home for any child to grow. Even though some people co-parent and make it look like it's easy, it's never easy. So my advice is, whenever you are going into anything as a couple, agree. And when you agree, God will always put a blessing to it. Life happens.